This is Off the 11th Hour, and I'm your host, Nathaniel Stone, but we all know who the Lord of Hosts is. Say it with me in any dialect you so choose. Yahweh, Sabaoth, Kodesh brothers and sisters, fellow members in the body of Messiah, and those in the world, thank you for giving me your attention in a world full of distractions. This is Season 2, Episode 18. Wow, we're getting kind of deep into things. I am running out of time, definitely. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get everything that I wanted to get in, but I had a dream yesterday to go ahead and put this teaching in first, and then some scriptures were given to me, so I believe that this is very important to be getting out into the world, into the body of Messiah, so that people can be aware of the things. You see, prophecy doesn't just strengthen our faith. It also gives us understanding of things that are coming so that we can avoid pitfalls, so that we don't get under deception, and so that we aren't under confusion, and so that ultimately that we don't give worship to something that is not Elohim, that is not God. And especially in the end days, the stakes are definitely a lot higher than what they are, maybe throughout different aspects of the world. So in time, so we need to really, really make sure that we understand what is going on, that understand what is happening here in the end days. This is a very, very special presentation. I've never heard this information anywhere else. I want to let you know that I feel that I have been given this by the Ruach Kodesh. We are to test spirits. So let's go ahead and test it. How do we test spirits? Against the word. We test it against the truth in the word to understand if this spirit is correct or not. And also, if things come to pass, then we understand as it's supposed to, as it's been predicted, proper interpretation of scripture. Then we understand if that spirit was from Elohim, was from God or not. So I'm going to be primarily in the ISR. Please follow along in any translation that you choose. Your home scripture translation. We might look at King James. I typically go between ISR and King James, but we need to move pretty quick because I am out of time. I had to change my flight ticket in order to do this sacrifice here so that I can get this information out. Very, very important. And my time window is really running short to get out of here. So we have a lot to cover. Let's talk about sci-fi. It's amazing when bear with me for a moment here, when it's amazing when you realize that the scriptures, the Bible, is the best science fiction novel you've ever read. And then when you realize it's not fiction, but fact, and you realize that it's not sci-fi, but sci-fi, it's the best, science, fact, science fiction, but in reality ever written. It is amazing. Do you guys know about teleportation? Do you know that teleportation is in the scriptures? Stick with me in this episode and in this series, and we're going to be getting into some really, really awesome things. We're going to be linking it in with CERN, the Large Hadron Collider. We're going to be linking that in with the demonic kingdom that the scriptures talk about. That's locked away in the abyss. We're going to be talking about, emotional, the two witnesses. Beautiful. What they mean I understand. I'm here. I'm presenting this to you, but it's all in my mind. It's so beautiful. The two witnesses. It's what they are. Man, Yahweh, or in the common tongue, the Lord, Adonai, Yahweh, the Father, His only begotten Son, Yahusha, in common tongue, Jesus Christ. They really, really, really care about their children, because it would be a lot easier for them just to start over and start from scratch, and or to just to erase things and move forward. But they really care about the sanctity of life and the sanctity of those of us who are trapped down in this system, and they have gone through tremendous work, not just to kabod, that's the Hebrew word for glorify or esteem themselves, but to also help us, because they call us Messiah calls us brothers. We brothers, sisters, we're family, and as family, no greater love than one who lays down his life for another. for another brother, another mishpachah, and more when yet we're still sinners, to give us the opportunity. So teleportation, right? Let me first say, so who first believes in the resurrection, or that resurrection is real? Well, most people that are here are going to say, yeah, I believe in resurrection. That's what the Brit Chadashah is founded on, the New Covenant, New Testament, renewed covenant, Brit Covenant Chadashah, to renew, to repair, to restore, to rebuild, or to make new. This new covenant, the New Testament writings, is founded on the most important resurrection ever found, ever to be, and it is literally the foundation, the cornerstone of this everlasting kingdom. Slain from the foundation of the world. The slain lamb. And we're gonna. But everyone understands that resurrection. Well, that's the greatest resurrection. That's the foundational resurrection. But I don't think people, there's a lot of resurrection in the Old Testament, resurrection in the New Testament. I really don't have to go over that. That's kind of a common miracle. I mean, it's not a common miracle, but it's more of a commonly well-known miracle in the scriptures. But what about teleportation? Do people know about teleportation? Well, that one's a little slightly less well known and talked about. So some Bible translations call teleportation translation. So what is teleportation? Well, it's a form of supernatural travel, yes. Let's look at the etymology of a word. So tele, it is between, reaching, over, distance, distant, carried out between two remote points. That's the word tele. Well, what is port? Well, a port is like a gateway or a safe haven, or to carry something. So for instance, like transport, so trans is across. A port can be referenced to, like, let's just say an ocean port, or maybe a port where like a dock where a truck, a semi-truck backs into, like an ocean port, right? Transport. So it could be across, and then a port, transport across the ocean, across two ports between oceans. So to carry from one port to another port via the ocean or a word. So that's transport. Well, teleport means reaching over distance. We're going to put the terminologies together now. Reaching over distance, carried out between two remote points. A safe haven is carried from gateway to gateway, or from one location to another. So a teleport is basically from gateway to gateway, and it is reaching over a distance. So that's the definition of the word teleport, and that teleport of that definition is found in the scriptures. It's a supernatural form of travel. So I would say that teleport is also a form of time travel, but we'll get into that here in a little bit, right? Because normally to walk from one location to another, you have to go through, a natural progression, whether you are using a horse or a truck or a boat or a plane or walking, more of a natural way of traveling from one point to another. But teleport would be what? Like an instantaneous or a supernatural form of travel. So let's first, and let's see what the word has to say about things. So Genesis, let's go ahead and turn there. Let's go over to the beach today, and let's get into Genesis chapter 5, verses 24. And Hanak, that's the word for Enoch, and Hanak means initiated, right, or dedicated. Okay, so that's what the word Hanak means. So Hanak walked with Elohim, then he was no more, for Elohim took him. Okay, so what does that mean, and Elohim took him? Well, some would say that that is teleport. So let's look here in Hebrews chapter 11. Let's get a witness on the matter here in the New Testament. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 11, and let's look here in verse 5. By the way, this is the Heroes of Faith chapter. We're going to make some references to this here in a little bit. I call it the Heroes of Faith, but hero, it kind of has a bad connotation to it. So let me maybe more accurately say the Gibborim of Amunah. The Gibborim would be essentially a mighty one. It is used as a neutral word. David and his men are called Gibborim. Samson is called, Gibbor, his men are Gibborim. Is plural, Gibbor is singular. David is called Gibbor. Samson is called Gibbor, but also Nimrod is called Gibbor. And also the Nephilim in Genesis, Nimrod in Genesis 10:8, and the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4 are called Gibborim. So Gibor, it mighty one. Well, I believe that the word, and I have more on that in the 144,000 teaching. Unfortunately, probably not going to be able to get to it in this season. Pray for me that I'll be able to get that information out to the body. But Gibor, I believe, is filled with a ruach or an unclean ruach, and it changes someone into a different person, giving them what we would call supernatural powers. Whether, but in David, it says that he could bend a bow of bronze. When you read in 2 Samuel chapter 21 and 22, you see a lot of supernatural things or also the account of Samson. What Samson did was supernatural. The things that were going on. So the ruach moved mightily upon him, and then he slew all those with the jawbone of a donkey. So Gibor is there. So Gibborim of Amunah, the so-called heroes of faith. In the common tongue that was there. So here we have Hebrews chapter 11:5 for by faith, by Amunah, Hanak, was translated. Now there's that word translated, was translated so as not to see death, and was not found because Elohim had translated him. For before his translation, he obtained witness that pleased Elohim. Well, let's take a look at that word translation. Let's see what we have. Well, that word for translation, let me find one that's, it looks like they're all there. Probably not going to see it. Let me go over to the other screen here so we can see that. That word for translation, matatithemi, excuse me. So that word that is there, G3346, can also be talked about to transfer, to change, to transfer oneself, or to go or pass over, or to transpose. Well, we also see that can be as the word removed or the word carried that they have there. So let's switch back to where we have. I wanted to make a point here because, we're talking about the two witnesses. So who are the two witnesses? So the two witnesses are found in Revelation 11. We're going to get into that shortly. But before we get into the actual account of the two witnesses, also, you guys need to understand there's a lot of people with, I think this, or maybe that, or it could be this, but, a lock and key, a lock has it has tumblers in it, and when the key that has jagged edges on it, when the jagged edges of the key get all the tumblers, which on the key side will all be disoriented. They won't be straight, but above it will be all straight, so that when it's all straight on the tumblers above, which the key basically aligns above, when the alignment happens above, the lock is able to turn and rotate and open up the door, or whatever it is that's locked. So I want to say that a lot of people, when they're getting into prophecy, they only will talk about this verse or that verse or this verse, and they won't talk about all the tumblers that are there. And they typically they do that when they try to fit their key, their understanding of what they think that that this mystery, this prophecy is talking about. They tend not to talk about everything. And I've seen some people say some things. They say that Enoch is one of the two witnesses, or they'll say that I just watched one that said that Ezekiel, Yehezkel is one of the two witnesses. Some will say that John is one of the two witnesses. Apostle John, or other people. And I just want to say that. I'm a little bit disappointed watching some of these videos, because these people who I do regard as brothers, I feel that they aren't bringing this information out. They don't share all the verses. They only share a couple little verses that might loosely connect to their point, but they don't share all the verses that are connected in with the two witnesses and connect with all the prophecy. I feel that this has been given to me, and we'll test the spirit, the ruach that opened up my understanding into this to share to you. So we'll test this together. And if you have any information that you might disagree with, here's my email. Go ahead and email me this information. If you disagree, put it in the comment box. But we need to move forward. I have a lot to go through. So I want to just briefly say, some people say that Enoch, Hanak, is one of the two witnesses. Well, okay, so we're going to look at this. Well, remember, this is the Gibborim of Amunah chapter, or the Heroes of Faith chapter. So we have here by faith, Abel, that's Habel, and then we have by faith, Hanak, Enoch, by faith, We have by faith Noah. Then we have by faith Abraham, and then we also have by faith Sarah. And then here we have and so from one, in him as good as dead were born, as numerous as the stars of the heaven, as countless as the sand which is by the seashore. Here it is in verse 13. In Amunah, in faith, all these died. Okay, so it says all these died. So I know people try to say that Enoch didn't die, but I'm not trying to split some hairs here. But sometimes the word as Hebrews chapter 4:12 says that it rightly divides spirit and soul and bone and sinew, bone and marrow. So sometimes we do got to split some hairs, and so. It says here that in faith all these died, not having received the promised land. Well, who is all? Well, by faith, Enoch. Well, did Abel die? Clearly, they died. Did Noah die? Yeah, Noah died. Elohim is not the Elohim of the dead, but of the living. So we know that in that protected place that they are alive. But ultimately, they did have to pass through the veil of death, but not the second death. So, again, splitting hairs. So we have here, so yes, Abraham died. Yes, Noah died. And so also who is included in here? We have Hanach. And so in Hanach here, as it says here in verse 13, in faith, all these died. So, I think Hanach is part of the all, right? It says here that let's with the splitting hair so as not to see death, so as not to see. But does that say that he didn't die, or that he just didn't see death, or that he didn't come to understand death, but that he did pass through the veil of death? Okay, but even if you don't want to agree with that point, that's okay. It's once you get all the data from the two witnesses, it's inconsequential because to a degree, it's consequential, but to this study, it's inconsequential, as you'll see, because there's so much overwhelming evidence as who the two witnesses are that how does everyone not see this? How do you not understand? How does people not see this? The data is overwhelming. There's so much that all point to the same thing. How can it be anything else? So once you get through with this whole study, and please watch this whole study, it is very, very impactful study. Then I would say that, if you want to say that is Hanach, you're going to have you're going to be up a really long hill that I think is impossible to climb, but prove me wrong. Show me why you still think that it's Ezekiel or Enoch or John the Apostle. Go ahead and show me. I'd love to hear, but please at least hear the matter out. So, so that's my understanding about of why I don't believe that it's Enoch, namely from that, but more importantly from the rest of that I have. So first, what I want to do. The rest of the study that I have. First that I want to do, I want to share, I want to establish teleportation as a scripturally found miracle. Translation, but I'm going to use the word teleportation. And I gave the definition of how I use that terminology, and we're going to see that terminology is there. Now, they say teleportation is through wormholes, right? Well, the worms go through wormholes, right? But I think the Abarayam, the Ibrim, the Hebrews, they travel through gateways. And it's the doors that only Yahuwah can open, and the doors that only Yahuwah can close. He's in full control of this. This is an ability. This is a spiritual gift that is given to certain believers, or is allowed on the world, in part for whatever reason as the Father allows, whether it's of good or of bad, but we see that this teleportation is under full control of the Father, but it is a spiritual gift that is given. So let's go ahead and let's look at Judges, the book of Judges. We're all going to do the Old Testament stuff first here, and then we'll get into the New Testament teleportation. So let's look in the book of Judges, chapter 13, verse 18. And the Malach of Yahuwah, the angel of the Lord, said to him, "Why do you ask my name, since it is wondrous?" Now, I believe this is Yehusha HaMashiach, by the way. You can agree to disagree, but whatever it is, this is who Jesus Christ in the common tongue that is here before he came in the flesh. He is there in that angelic body, or that type of body. That's an angelic-like body, that spirit body, but we'll move forward. That's not the point of this here. And Manoach this is Samson's parents. Manoach took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock to Yahuwah. And he did wondrously while Manoach and his wife looked on. and sorry, I'm making sure I said what I said correctly. And it came to be as the flame went up toward the heavens from the slaughter place, from the altar, that Malach, Yahuwah, the angel of the Lord, went up in the flame of the slaughter place altar, and Manoach and his wife were watching, and they fell their faces to the ground, and the messenger of Yahuwah, the angel of the Lord, did not appear anymore to Manoach and his wife. Then Manoach knew that he was a messenger of Yahuwah. And then this is another reason why I believe it's Messiah, because it says, and Manoach said to his wife, we shall certainly die because we have seen Elohim. Now, Jesus Christ is Elohim. I don't want to, that word for God in English, but also as we know in Revelation chapter 3:12, that he also has Elohim. He also has a mighty one. And so he is Elohim, but he has Elohim. I'm not going to get into Trinitarian pro or against doctrine, but there is no denying that he is Elohim. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And then we see a plurality that is there in Genesis 1:26 and 27, in our image we created them, and so we have a plurality in Genesis chapter 1:26 and 27. So Elohim, at least in Genesis 1:1, would be the Father and the Son, which is what we see in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. So let's move forward. So this is why I believe this is Messiah that is here. But again, that is like a little piece of extra tidbit there, but not part of the main doctrine of the study. What we have here is that we see a supernatural teleportation of this Malach, this angel of the Lord, this Malach Yahuwah, that traveled from earth up into Shamayim through the sacrifice. That's a supernatural teleportation travel. Okay, let's move now to Yechezkel, the book of Ezekiel, chapter, I believe it's chapter 3, 1 verse 3. And then let's see another example that is there. Here we go. Okay, thank you. Ezekiel 1:3, and the word of Yahuwah came expressly to Yechezkel, to Ezekiel, the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Kasdim by the river Kebar, and the hand of Yahuwah came upon him there. And then we see, and I'm not going to get into it, we see a lot of supernatural stuff. He just saw some wondrous things. He saw the throne, he saw the chariot of Yahuwah, of the Lord. He saw just some amazing things. And now we see here in 3 verse 12, Ezekiel 3:12, chapter 3 verse 12, it says, and the Ruach lifted me up, the Spirit lifted me up, and behind me I heard the sound of a great rumbling voice. So this Ruach lifted him up. Blessed be the kabod, the glory of Yahuwah from his place, and the sound of the wings of the living creatures touched one another, and the sound of the wheels beside them, and the sound of a great rushing, and the Ruach lifted me and took me away, and I went in bitterness in the heat of my Ruach, while the hand of Yahuwah was strong upon me, and I came to the exiles at Tel Aviv, dialect things, who were dwelling by the river Kebar, and I sat where they were sitting, and sat there stunned among them 7 days. Why? Why was he stunned? Well, has anyone gone through a supernatural experience to the level that Yechezkel has gone through? I've gone through some supernatural experiences, but nothing to that level. It's when you go through something supernatural, even small or big, what have you, something that's supernatural, especially something to the degree that Yechezkel went through. He's just sitting there stunned, I can only speak here with a level of understanding, did that just happen? Did I just see that? I'm awake, right? I'm sane. Am I dreaming? Nope, that was real. Those are my memories. I have a memory log system that I do, and that's a trusted memory. I just experienced that. That's true. Wow. But no, I was here and now I'm there. I was picked up over here and I was dropped off over there. Oh my goodness. Did I just just experience that? He's stunned for 7 days. That is there by the river Kebar. So we see here a form of teleportation as Yechezkel is picked up from one location supernaturally and then dropped off somewhere else. And he didn't walk there. So now let's go to Let's go to now. This is a very, very key verse. I wanna thank brother Baruch for giving me this information. A lot of the information that I have actually is the collectivization of from brothers, and then I'm just able to put this together. And so I want to thank Brother Baruch for giving me this. If I didn't have this piece of information, this study wouldn't be the same, because this really magnifies the two witnesses once we understand what it is. So here we are in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 10, and we have, as Yahweh your Elohim lives. Let me give a backdrop here, a backstory here. This is Obadiah that is here, Obadiah, and he is King Ahab is told Obadiah to find Eliyahu because there's no rain. Because here it is in the third year, and there's still no rain. They're in a famine, more a drought, I should say, but a famine too, because there's no rain. More on that later. We're gonna very important point here is that's gonna connect in. So. King Ahab wants to find Elijah. That's the word for Eliyahu, Elijah. He wants to find Elijah because he's like, hey, word is that you prayed and it stopped raining. Can you get the rain going again? Because the kingdom I've been entrusted with is undergoing a lot of problems, right? So Obadiah finds Eliyahu, and Obadiah says, is that you, my master, my Adonai, Eliyahu? And then he says, it is I. And then he says, go and tell Ahab that I'm here, basically. I'm going to paraphrase some of this. Go ahead and look at this information in detail while I'm covering it, or in your own study, 1 Kings chapter 18. And we're going to do, maybe 1 through 12. And so then here we have here, that is here. So in verse 8, he says, Elijah tells Obadiah to go tell Ahab that I'm here. Now, how does Obadiah respond? He says, what are you trying to kill me, and why? He says, verse 10 through 12, as Yahuwah your Elohim lives, there is no nation or reign where my master has not sent to look for you. And when they said he is not here, he made the rain or nation swear that they could not find you. And now you say, go say to your master, Eliyahu is here. Here it is. This is it. This is teleportation. And it shall be, as soon as I am gone from you, that the Ruach of Yahuwah, the Spirit of the Lord, takes you away to a place I do not know, and I shall come and report to Ahab, and when he does not find you, he shall kill me. But I, your servant, have feared Yahuwah from my youth. What is he saying here? He's saying, now this is common knowledge at the time. People understood that Elijah would move through what we now would call teleportation or translation. And this was so well known that even all the nations knew it. What did it say here? He says, that there is no nation or kingdom where my master, he's saying where Ahab has not sent to look for you. Why is he looking in all the kingdoms? And they're all saying he's not here, they can't find you. And then he says that you tell me to say that you're here, but the second that I leave to go get Ahab to bring me to where you are, that the Ruach of Yahuwah, to protect you, essentially is what he's saying, because Ahab and his terrible wife Jezebel was killing all the prophets, as we'll cover here in a little bit, and doing a lot of wickedness that was going on, and doing a lot of mixed worship. We're going to get in more on that later on, and so Eliyahu was being preserved by Yahuwah, and so Obadiah knew this, and so he knew that if he left, that likely that the Ruach of Yahuwah, the Spirit of the Lord, was going to take Elijah and then put him somewhere else. Ahab is going to be brought to that location, and then Elijah's not going to be there, and then Ahab is going to tell the Obadiah, you lied to me, he's not here, and then he's going to kill Obadiah. So I just want to make this point known that not only did everyone, or a lot of people in Yasharal, in Israel, in the kingdom, including King Ahab and Obadiah, Obadiah, but also those of the nations, they knew that Eliyahu would move around supernaturally. Teleportation is found in the Old Testament. So now, I want to look at where Eliyahu was taken up. So let's go to 2 Kings chapter 2:11. So 2 Kings chapter 2:11 says, Yeah, 2 Kings chapter 2, yeah, verse 11. Okay, so we have here in the, I'm in 2 Kings. Oh, that's my problem. You probably caught that already. Sorry, thank you. Here we are. 2 Kings chapter 2:11. And it came to be, as they continued on and spoke, that see, a chariot of fire with horses of fire, which separated the two of them, and Elijah, went up by a whirlwind into the heavens. And Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel, and its horsemen, and he saw him no more. And then he took hold of his garments and tore them into two pieces. Why two pieces, right? Why two pieces? Well, two pieces, as we're going to get into that, of the two Eliahus yet to come from that point in time. But we'll get into that as we get into the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament stuff. But why two pieces? There's a reason why. We'll connect into that. I hope to remember that. At least you can remember when we get into the two Eliyahu of one that has come and one that is to come, or from this point in time, two that are to come. That's why it's two pieces there. But still, we see here what? A chariot of fire with horses of fire, and then he's taken up. Right, so what could that be? You could say this is a spaceship, in our modern day word here. We could say that he was taken up in a spaceship. Whatever word you want to put on it. The scripture says it was a chariot of fire with horses of fire, and he went up into the heavens. Well, the heavens, the first heaven would be like where airplanes fly. The second heavens would be in the firmament. Whether you believe what your understanding of the firmament is, if it's space or where the sun, moon, and stars are. I don't want to get into that topic right now, but that would be the second heaven, and then the third heaven would be what? That would be like a different dimension of different creation, the heaven of heavens, so to speak. Well, it says here that he was taken up into the heavens. So at the very least, could we maybe say the firmament into outer space? So that would be a firmament ship or a spaceship that was there that he was taken up. At the very least, some kind of a flying device. Okay, so that he was taken up in, So I just want to point out here that he went up in a form of supernatural travel. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily teleportation, but it is a form of supernatural travel. So now let's go forward. And by the way, where did Eliyahu go? So I believe I've been given the answer to this mystery, and also why he had to leave. But more on that later on in the series. So now let's show some New Testament verses. So I'm not going to put them in. We're going to put them in a certain order. Hopefully you can see why I went in the order. I'm going to kind of make them progressively, building into what I think is the greatest teleportation mentioned in the scriptures through our King and Savior Yahusha HaMashiach. We're going to see what he did at the end of this New Testament here. But let's look at Acts chapter 8. Many of you probably already know this one. Let's look at Acts chapter 8, and let's see in verse 39 through 40. This is with the eunuch and Philip and the eunuch, the Ethiopian eunuch that is there. And what we see here is when he was baptized, immersed, as we see in the end of verse 38, and now here 38, 9, and 40. And when they came up out of the water, the Ruach of Yahweh, there is that same terminology, the Spirit of the Lord, caught Philip away. And the eunuch saw him no more, for he went his way rejoicing. Philip, however, was found at Ashdod, and passing through, he brought the Basora in all the cities until he came to Caesarea. So we have here that the Ruach of Yahuwah picked him up, and that the eunuch saw him no more. He was supernaturally taken, and then was found over at Ashdod, and that is I think it's about 14 miles away, if my memory serves me correct. I didn't look up that point. I didn't think to look up that point. Regardless, he was found a different location from where he was. He was at a different location, a form of teleportation. Now let's look in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. So 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. Here's that message of the third heaven. Paul talking here. I know a man in Messiah who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, Elohim knows, God knows, such a one was caught up to the third heaven. And I know such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. Elohim knows that he was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not right for a man to speak. So what we have here is another form of teleportation. Now, some believe this is that Paul was talking about himself, but he was trying to stay humble. But regardless of who Paul was talking about, Paul is saying that he knows of a man in Messiah, whether it's himself or somebody else, and that this person was caught up into the third heaven, and he doesn't know if he was in the body or out of the body. Teleportation, supernatural travel. So here we have that supernatural travel that is there. So let's now look at some what could be considered, and you'll understand why I'm saying what could be considered teleportation after the resurrection of Messiah. So let's look in Luke chapter 24, verses 29 through 31. So Luke 24, 29 through 31, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, for it is evening, and the day has declined." And he went in to stay with them. And by the way, to put this in context, it says here that let me kind of go up. That is there. But they urged him strongly. This is Messiah that he's talking about. They didn't recognize him right away, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day has declined." And he went in to stay with them. And it came to be that when he sat at the table with them, having taken bread, he blessed, and having broken, he was giving it to them, and their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. So did he turn invisible at this point in time? Or did he just disappear from their sight? Or did he teleport somewhere? Well, that's why I said it could be considered a teleportation, but it is some supernatural event happened. He disappeared. If someone disappeared right in front of me, I would not say that's a natural occurrence. I would say that would be a supernatural occurrence. But what is supernatural to us is natural to Elohim, to the Most High. But to keep things in context, we'll keep the understanding of natural and supernatural. But at least you understand that all things are natural to the Most High. There is nothing that He can't do that is beyond His ability. So let's that's Luke 24:31 that we see there, some type of invisible event or a teleportation. He teleported out of there. Now, let's look a little bit further in that, and let's look in Luke 24:36. And as they were saying this, Yahusha, Jesus himself, stood in the midst of them and said to them, "Shalom to you." And so here we have something happen. He just stood in their midst, like all of a sudden, poof, he appeared, and he's like, "Hey, shalom, guys! Like, here I am after the resurrection." Was that teleportation, or did he use some invisibility trick, not trick, but some invisibility gift, and then appear? Is something supernatural? It could be teleportation, but again, I'm covering a lot of things that are along this lines, and some are stronger arguments, some might be weaker arguments. I would say this maybe isn't as strong as others because we don't know whether it is invisibility or teleportation, but supernatural event occurred there. So now let's go to John chapter 20, verse 19. I believe this is another instance of the it's not 1920. Let me get 2019. This is like of the same passage, but we're given a little bit different additional information. John 20:19. When therefore it was evening on that day one of the week, and when the doors were shut where the taught ones, the Talmudim, the disciples, met for fear of the Yahudim, Yahusha came and stood in the midst and said to them, "Shalom to you." So here we have that the doors were shut. So they were shut. Right? Shut, locked, because they were fearful of the Yahudim. They were scared of persecution from these individuals that were under the spirit of the Antichrist, that was denying Messiah, and that spirit already in the world. We covered that in the Camouflage series prior to this. But regardless, the doors were shut, and here Messiah just poof, shalom to you. So if he was invisible, then he was able to walk through walls, or he teleported in. So, and now let's look at an example of what I believe to be the greatest teleportation event in scriptures, and this happened before the resurrection. So let's look, stay in the book of John. Let's look in chapter 6:16. And when evening came, his taught ones, his disciples, went down to the sea, and entering into the boat, they were going over the sea toward Capernaum, and it had already become dark, and Yahusha, Jesus, had not yet come to them. And the sea was rising, because of the great wind was blowing. And when they had rowed about 25 or 30 stadia, that's about, 3 to 4 miles, 5 or 6 kilometers, they saw Yahusha walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were afraid. And he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Here it is, verse 21. They wished therefore to take him into the boat, and zoop, I'm adding the word zoop in there, and they wished to take him into the boat, and at once the boat was at the land where they were going. I think that's cut and dry teleportation. So not only did Messiah teleport himself, body, what do you have? You have time, space, and matter. So not only was in the third, what we call the third dimension, not only did he take time, space, and matter of himself, but also of an entire boat and the entire crew. And zoop, they're on the other side at once, where they were going. And then you can follow on this passage more, that people are like, how did he get here? Because there's no other boat except which one that he went into. And then he didn't enter into the boat. People are like, how did he get over here? I saw his disciples leave, and then all of a sudden now here he is over there, but there's no boat, and there's no way for him to get over here without that boat. But regardless, teleportation. So not only did he walk on water, which is also a miracle, turn water to wine, that's a miracle. And transfiguration of the mount, that's a huge miracle. We're going to get into that later. But he also teleported. Wow. Science fact, not fiction. In the scriptures, he teleported and he didn't do it with some magical device. He didn't do it for some machinery or whatever. He did it by Amunah, right? By his Amunah, by the Ruach, the power of the Ruach, walking in spirit and truth. He did that with the abilities given to him by the Father. And he says, greater things than me you'll be able to do, right? And so can we fly through Amunah? Can we fly in the future, so that we can pick up a mountain? What is that? I think it's Matthew 17:10 or no, it's 10:17, I think. Pick up a mountain and move it with our Amunah, the size of a mustard grain. Take some of this stuff literal, because I don't take that walking on water as just a story. I take it as literal. And when he said that you can pick up a mountain with your faith the size of the mustard seed, I think that's also literal. And if you can pick up a mountain, then you can probably pick up yourself and fly. Let's just be realistic here. like we see people flying off. We see when in Acts chapter 1 that Messiah just caught up into the clouds, into the air, just flew off up in the sky, and the clouds went over. They couldn't see him anymore. So who knows what abilities that we have in store, or in the world to come, or the world that we are currently in. We are coming into some really, really interesting times on the world, both good and bad. Okay, so so now we saw all of these aspects of teleportation in the scriptures. So what I would like to do here in this point is I want to share something with you, my own personal testimony. Now, in Luke chapter 24:11, it says, "And their words appeared to them to be nonsense, and they did not believe them." So and this is regarding the resurrection. They saw the resurrection of Messiah. Some people saw the resurrection, and they went and told the apostles, the disciples, and they were like, "Yeah, that's a bunch of nonsense. I don't believe you." So what I'm about to share with you right now, it's okay if you don't believe, that's there, but I am bound to the ninth commandment, as we're all bound to Torah, and we are in account for every word that comes out of our mouth. So with that, I want to share a testimony of myself. I have seen teleportation. I have not experienced it firsthand account that I'm aware of. I don't want to get into that, but I've seen teleportation, and I want to share something with you. I'm gonna have to jump into the middle of this. I don't have time to do the full event, but there was a lot of supernatural things that was happening, and I was being gang stalked, if you understand what this terminology means. I just learned the definition of the word recently, but but once understood the word, I'm like, oh yeah, I have experienced that. Well, go look up the term gang stalking, and then understand that it was on a supernatural event. So I'm gonna jump into the middle of this event. I was in in the middle of Missouri, southern Missouri, and I was under some really heavy attack that was going on, and I had to get to a brother's house, and I was traveling over 1,000 miles to get there. There was a supernatural event that had happened, and I had to leave and get out of there. And I was in a fast, like a long fast, and I am driving at nighttime. And I am on high alert because there's a lot of supernatural things that have been happening, and I was, anyways, let's jump into it. So I'm driving down this road, and as I passed this road, go past this road, there was a bar on my left hand side. It's nighttime, late in the night, and there wasn't very many people out on the road, if at all, that were in that location where I was at. This bar, it looked to be, I don't remember the depth of it, but I remember the face of it. It looked to be like a giant black rectangle that was lit up all in red. The door was lit up in red, and then the bar itself around the outside was lit up in red. It looked like a giant red, like the perimeter of it, or the outside, the corners of it, so to speak, the edges of it were lit up in red. It looked like a giant black cube. If anyone understands what the black cube is from, it's connected with the false god Kayun, found in Amos chapter 5:26 and Acts 7:43. You can look up on that on your own. Connected in with the Saturn. Anyway, let's move forward on that. So as I'm driving past this bar, I see two motorcycles there. And as I see these two motorcycles there, I heard the Ruach tell me, that motorcycle. And I'm already looking at the bar because I feel something, something ominous in there. And I see this motorcycle, these two motorcycles, and it says that motorcycle. I'm like, okay. And so I keep driving, I'm driving, 55 mile an hour, on a state road. And I'm continuing, and then all of a sudden, about a minute later, this motorcycle comes up behind me, and the Ruach says, that motorcycle. And I instantly realized that I was being hunted. Again, like they found me again. And so I'm driving, and now I'm coming into a small town. And I'm a little bit bold on some aspects, and I'm like, you're not gonna tail behind me. And so I quickly jam on my brakes, put my turn signal on, and get over into the side of the road. There wasn't even really a ditch to go there. And the motorcycle quite didn't know what to do. I didn't know, I don't know. And he gets around me. I didn't jam hard on my brakes, but I did slow down abruptly, not to put him in, any kind of major danger. I don't want him to slam into the back of me. And so he kind of quite didn't understand what to do right away, which if he wasn't trying to tail me, he would have just gone around me right away. It was easy for him to go around me right away, but he kind of delayed for a moment, but regardless, he quickly, after he decided what to do, got around me. And then as soon as he gets around me, I quickly gun it and then zoom up behind him. Okay. And he wasn't more than maybe 5 car lengths in front of me. As we're coming into this little town. And as we're coming into this town, there's a road that was there that was lit up with street lights, and then he took a hard right up that road. And as I'm driving, and I'm only not too far, a few seconds behind him, and as I'm driving behind him and come past that intersection, I'm going straight, he turned right, and I look up that road, and that road is slightly uphill, and a lot of street lights, and I don't want to say every house had their porch light on, but a lot of houses had their porch light on. That road was very well lit up, and that road went uphill a little bit. There was no other roads. That was the only road, not to the left or to the right, the only road that was there. And I kept driving past, and it wasn't more than maybe at the most 2 blocks, and I'm moving. I don't hit my brakes. I'm continuing to move. And as soon as I pass, there's like a gas station coming up on my right, and as I'm passing this gas station, there's a motorcycle in the parking lot there, facing out with this light on, and the motorcyclist was on the motorcycle, and the Ruach said, "That motorcycle." And then as soon as I pass, he pulls out behind me, and the Ruach tells me, "Don't let him know that you know that he teleported from one location to the other location." I understand, even now, as I say this, I look back in my memory and I'm like, wow, like, it's kind of like, sitting stunned at the River Kabar with Ezekiel chapter, 3:15. It's just sitting there stunned. Like, is this really happening? Even in the moment, and now looking back at it now, I'm like, and I'm saying like, wow, like, did I experience that? And then I look like, no, like, that memory was very, very well logged in my memory. That experience was very well logged, and I remember that. So that is a testimony that I can say that I have seen teleportation. That we know that Satan has gifts and abilities that the Father allows. Also, we see here in the end days that they're able to do great signs and wonders, as Matthew 24:24 says, and in other places. So I just wanted to share that I personally have seen teleportation in an enemy form. We can call that shadow jumping, whatever it is that you want to call that. So now that we've established teleportation as legitimately found in the scriptures, Old and New Testament, I want you to remember that Elijah was trained in the spiritual art form of teleportation. And remember what we saw in 1 Kings 18:12 is that, I'm just read, it says that Obadiah says that as soon I'm gone from you, that the Ruach of Yahuwah, the Spirit of the Lord, takes you away to a place I do not know. So we see again, Eliyahu, and not just once, is known to move around teleportation. And why? Well, I believe that Eliyahu was being trained. Chayanak was being trained in the spiritual gift, the spiritual art form of teleportation, because a mission was called upon his life. And we're going to get into that later on. But I want to establish another gift that Eliyahu was given. And that is the gift of resurrection. So we're going to find this in 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 17 through 24. So let's go ahead and turn there with me. Follow along in any translation that you so choose. 1 Kings chapter 17 through 24. And after these events, it came to be that the son of the woman who owned the house became sick, and his sickness was very severe until there was no breath left in him. And she said to Eliyahu, what have I to do with you, O man of Elohim? Have you come to me to bring my crookedness to be remembered and to kill my son? And he said to her, give me your son. So he took him from her arms and took him to the upper room where he was dwelling and laid him on his own bed and cried out to Yahuwah and said, O Yahuwah, my Elohim, have you also brought evil on the widow with whom I am sojourning to kill her son? And he stretched himself out on the child 3 times and cried out to Yahuwah and said, O Yahuwah, my Elohim, I pray, let the life of the child come back to him. And Yahuwah heard the voice of Eliyahu, and the life of the child came back to him and he lived. And Eliyahu took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to the mother. And Eliyahu said, see, your son lives. And the woman said to Eliyahu, now by this I know that you are a man of Elohim, and that the word of Yahuwah in your mouth is truth. So I want you to remember this. We'll come back to this point again, that the word of Yahuwah is truth. The word of Yahuwah in your mouth is truth. Well, Messiah is the word. He is the way, the life, and the way, the truth, and the life. That truth is the word. We're going to come into that more on that later on, connecting in with that the word is truth. That word in his mouth is truth. So this is a gift. Now, I don't want to get into I don't want to get into to other aspects of resurrection. Elisha, there's a resurrection, accounts with him. Someone, had touched his bones and came back to life. And there's other accounts in the Old and New Testament resurrection. Again, resurrection is more of a commonly known miracle. It's not necessarily a common miracle in the world, but it's commonly well known. But teleportation is not. But Elijah was trained or was given the ability of both teleportation and resurrection. And so now I want to explain something that's gonna relate in with the two witnesses. Remember, we're getting into the two witnesses. And again, this is going to be a long study. I don't have time to say or start, stop. I'm running out of time. So this is going to be a lengthy study. But thank you for sticking with me. I hope that you're hungry. I hope this information, stick with it. We're going to see some really, really interesting stuff here soon. But let's get into the 360-day year that a lot of people might not know about. So let's get into Genesis chapter 7, 7:11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second new moon, the 17th day of the moon, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of the heaven were opened up. So the flood happened from top and bottom. Okay. So that, but what we have, I want you to remember the 17th day of the second month. So the 17th Yom in the second Chodesh. Chodesh is month, Yom is day. So now at the very end of this, we have Genesis 7:24, and the waters were mighty on the earth 150 days. So we have month 2, day 17. And then we have in the Masoretic text, month 2, day 17. The Septuagint will say a different number, but the number is the same when you compare them, as you're going to see. And you can do your own study on the Septuagint of what it says in Genesis 7:11, in Genesis 8:4. But we're going to continue in the Masoretic here, but it doesn't change the numerical values through the equation that we're doing. So, and the waters were mighty on the earth 150 days. So remember that. Now we're going to go to Genesis chapter 8, 3 and 4. And the waters receded steadily from the earth. And at the end of the 150 days, the water was diminished. So now we have at the end of the 150 days, and in the 7th new moon, on the 17th day of the new moon, the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. So what we have is we have month 2, day 17, month 7, day 17. They're both on the same day of the month cycle. The month is connected to the moon. As the common understanding, those that don't agree with me, at least you can say it's to happen on the same cycle of the month. However you count a month, whether a month is days or a month is the light of the moon, or however you decide to count the month, is on the 17th, on the 17th or on the 17th, or in the Septuagint, the 27th or the 27th. It's the same demarcation point of the month. So that means that you have month 2 and month 7. So 7 minus 2 is exactly 5 months. So in exactly 5 months, you have what? 150 days, right? They were mighty for 150 days. And then at the end of the 150 days, showing you that it's a full 150 days, he says that the ark rested on Ararat. So let's do some mathematical calculations here. And if you have a calculator, let's pull it out. So you have 150 days. Well, and then you have 5 months. So if you divide that 150 days divided by 5 months, you're going to come out to 30 days per month. So that means that in Genesis chapter 7 and 8, that there was exactly 30 days in a month cycle. And now this disproves, this is some calendrical stuff, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but this disproves some people in some calendars, because you have 5 months in a row that had 30, 5 months in a row, and it was 150 days. The Enochian calendar has 30, and then a special day, which is either equinox or solstice, and then 30. So there would be, in a 5-month period in time, at least 1 up to 2 equinox and solstice days. And so you couldn't have 5 months and 150 days in that cycle. And any other calendar that you're on, it has to fit this pattern. But we know more on that in a calendar study. I wish I could get it. Please keep me in the prayer that I can get this in season 3, the calendar understanding. But so we have 30 days in a month cycle. And according to scriptures, whether it's the priestly cycle of David and Solomon, there's 12 or 24 priestly cycles that are there in a reoccurrence order. There's also talking about 12 months in multiple locations. I don't have this pulled up because this is a calendar study. So and I don't want to get too deep in a calendar study here, but we have here 12 months. And so if you take 30 days in a month, multiplied it by 12 months, you would get exactly 360 days in a year. And then you may ask yourself, well, Nathaniel, we're not at 360 days in a year now, are we? We're at what? 365.2429 181, I believe, or in days in a year. And so it's, in short, 365 days in a quarter, but it's not quite a full quarter. It's less than a quarter. And then we don't have exactly 30 days in a month cycle. We have from cycle to cycle, wherever your demarcation point to demarcation point is, whether you go on crescent to crescent or full moon to full moon or kasa to kasa, covered moon to covered moon, wherever your demarcation point is that you have, then we now today have approximately 29.53 because of the elliptical, the ellipse on the orbit. And if you don't believe it's an orbit, that's okay. Because of the ellipse that is there, that's why it's 29.53. Sometimes it's 29.6, sometimes it's 29.4, but it averages out to 29.53. This is other studies in the future, but why we're not at 29, we're not at 30, we're at 29 in short 0.5. So, I hope you kept up with me. Those that, don't know math, you're like, what did you just say? Well, okay, play it back at slow pace and, half speed or something and write it down or let's just move forward from here. So, 360 days in a year. Now, why today do we have 360 degrees in a circle? Why 360 degrees in a circle? Well, a circle can be cut into a lot of pieces. You can cut a circle, into 2 pieces, into 4 pieces, into 1,000, 1,000,000 pieces. Why do we cut a piece of pie into 360 pieces? Why are there 360 degrees in a circle? Because this is evidence, historical evidence, and backed in history, and we get into a calendar study, that all the calendars of the world used to be 360 days in a year. At least all the good calendars, the one that were accurate, were 360 days in a year. But then something happened. Well, I believe in that Hezekiah's day, when Isaiah, Yeshayahu asked Hezekiah, for a sign that he wasn't going to die, and he chose the sign to have the miracle of the sundial, the shadow on the sundial, go back 10 degrees, not forward. I believe that at that point in time, and this is arguably about 701 BC, some plus or minus on the dates on that are there. All the calendars in the world changed around 701 BC, and now no longer do we have 360 days in a year, 30 days in a moon, and exactly what we would count 24 hours precisely in a day. The calendar was shifted. So you could say that sin or deviation or whatever you want to say has even entered into the celestial bodies. Now what counts time is not, grains of sand or atomic clock, as the atom is sending a pulse of a decayed atom in sending, nanosecond pulse through the atomic clock system that we have today, which is just a more advanced way of grains of sand falling through an hourglass. That is not what determines time. Joshua's day is Joshua's day. One day, because the sun and moon stood still in the sky. It's only one day. So a day is from demarcation point to demarcation point. I think it's sundown to sundown, but sunrise to sunrise, whatever, some say, the Romans say it's midnight to midnight, whatever you think it is. A day, the time is, a day is still a day. But the days are a little bit less than what they used to be. It's not quite exactly 24 hours as we'd count 24 hours. And also, the moon cycle is a little bit less also. It went from 30 to 29.5, but it's still a single moon cycle. Is from demarcation point to demarcation point. So we can't count time in the calculated sense or we can, but but it has to be in alignment with the celestial bodies, the grandfather clock in the sky, and then also, the days in a year. It never says, there's never any scripture anywhere that says definitively that there has to be 360 or whatever. I mean, in the standard canon, you see that in the book of Enoch, that is there, but you don't see that in the standard canon because technically, according to what makes time, time is demarcation point to demarcation point. So, you could say the Hebrew word tekufa to tekufa, which some people would think that would be the equinox or the vernal equinox, according to Jerusalem time. Or the month cycle, chodesh to chodesh, or yom to yom, or areb to areb, that's evening to evening. Not to get too much on the calendar, I've already said more that I wanted to share, but I just wanted to share that according to Genesis chapter 7 and 8, there is 150 days and 5 months, and that means 30 days in a month, and then you multiply 30 times 12, and you get 360. So now I want to share one other little point, and then we're going to move forward. Let's look in the book of Daniel to establish another point regarding this, and this is again connected in with the two witnesses. And let's look in the book of Daniel chapter 4. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar wrote chapter 4. The scriptures was written by Nebuchadnezzar here in chapter 4. Daniel 4:25 says, talking about a prophecy. I don't want to get too much into it. I just want to share this. 7 times pass over you. So we see this word times 7 times. We see this word times, and we're going to see how times is connected. Now we also see here, oh, good, I do have it. Well, it doesn't connect it with year. There's other scriptures that say there's 12 months that is there, but here we have at the end of 12 months. I do believe that this is talking about that time or that season. And then we have in verse 32, we have here 7 seasons shall pass over you. So we have 7 months, 12 months, which I believe is a single season, and again, this is before that point in time of Isaiah, Hezekiah, that was there. So we see here that 12 months here, but 7 times in Daniel 4:25 and Daniel 4:32, we have 7 seasons. So times is connected with seasons, and I believe that those seasons are connected with years. That is there. Okay. So now I'm going to make the point, and I'm going to share that point here in Revelation, and we're going to connect that in with Revelation. So now I have Revelation chapter 11, and we're going to have here, we're going to look at some numbers here. We're going to have Revelation 11, that the nations trampled Jerusalem for 42 months. And then we also have another number that the two witnesses, now this is the two witnesses chapter, we'll come into this later on. The two witnesses are going to prophesy for 1,260 days. So we have 42 months, and then we have 1,260 days. Now we're going to look in the next chapter, Revelation chapter 12:6, and we see here that this woman goes into the wilderness and she is nourished 1,260 days. And then we have in verse 14 that this woman who goes into the wilderness, and now it doesn't. It seems like the same event, and it says that she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. And so now we have 1,260 is connected with times, and half a time. And then in the previous verse, we have 42 months connected with 1,260 days. Now we're going to see in Revelation chapter 13, verses 5, we're going to see that this beast, this head that was slain and given this authority again, speaking great matters, he does so for 42 months. And now we're going to connect that 42 months in a later study. We'll connect here with, the book of Daniel, that the fourth beast of Daniel chapter 7. You can do this on your own if I don't get to it in time. The fourth beast of Daniel chapter 7 is connected with the first beast of Revelation 13. There's about a dozen connections between the fourth beast of Daniel 7 and the first beast of Revelation 14. But we have here, remember, Revelation 13:5 says 42 months. This beast in 42 months is given 42 months. Here we have in Daniel 7:25 that it intends to change the law in the appointed times, and they are given into its hand for a time, times, and half a time. So now we have time, times, and half a time connected with 42 months. That is there. So let's get our calculators out. I got this stuff memorized. Hopefully, I got this stuff memorized. So what do we have? Well, we have, briefly ad-libbing again. I believe that the Father does this time and time again. He will give us 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, count of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matters established. He'll give us, 2 or 3, let's just keep it simple, 2 or 3 ways to say the same thing. So he'll tell one person one thing and another person another thing, and he tells them in completely different ways, but they both have the same end result, and that's a verification way of saying the same thing. He does this in Pentecost, or Shavuot in Hebrew, and when you're looking into the studies in Pentecost or Shavuot, he says one, in the morrow, the day after the 7th Sabbath is this day, the more, and then he also says that you count for yourself 50 days. So you have 50 days, and then he says that the day after the 7th Sabbath, and so you're counting 7 complete Sabbath cycles, which is 7 times 7, which is 49. And also I believe, well, I don't want to get into that. That's calendar study stuff. 7 times 7 is 49, and then it's the day after the 49th day, which is day 50. And then he says that same thing with, the 50th day. So he tells you 2 different ways that you count 50 days from this point. You count 7 complete Sabbaths from this point, and the day after the 7th complete Sabbath, a cycle, then tell me what day it is. Well, this is the day. Well, that's the same day. Well, that's Shavuot. That's Pentecost. He does the same thing with the Shemitah years and the Yobel, or the Sabbath of years and the Jubilee year. He does the same thing. He does that again. So I'm going to verify. That's verified points. He verifies this point also. 40. So I'm going to ask you a question. Which is longer? 1 foot, 12 inches, or 24 half inches? Well, those of you that are quick on the take will be like, wait, a foot is 12 inches. And you're like, yeah, exactly. So what's longer, a foot or 12 inches? It's the same measurement, correct. So I'll ask the same question in a scriptural format. Which is longer, 42 months, 1,260 days, or 3.5 years? Well, if you're using the 360-day cycle, which is found in Genesis chapter 7 and 8 that we covered, and now you're connecting that with Revelation 11, 12, and 13, let's do some math on this. Using a 360-day cycle, 42 months, now 360 days in a year and 12 months in a year, it means that there's 30 days in a month. So 42 months times 30 days in a month is 1,260 days. 1,260 days. Oh, and I forgot to mention the point that we covered in Daniel chapter 4 that we covered, that shows that times is connected with seasons, and that seasons is connected with years. So times, and half a time is time. So 1 times, that's 2, and then half a time is a half. So 1 plus 2 plus a half is 3.5 years. So if you take 1,260 days and divide it by times, and half a time, 3.5, you get 360 days in a year. So if you take 3.5 years, multiply by 360, you get 1,260 days. If you take 1,260 days divided by 30 days in a month, you get 42 months. Okay, so that means that 42 months and 1,260 days and 3.5 years is the same period in time. And so we need to establish that. Now, this is why later on, as I'm going to connect, why I think that there's a supernatural event that is going to mark that, because right now we're not in 360 days in a year. We're not in 30 days in a month, and we don't. So therefore, it can't be the 2 witnesses that would be prophesying. It has 3 counts. That means that it says that they're there, 42 months or 1,260 days, which is also 3.5 years. All 3 of those points can't be met with our current calendrical cycle today. I believe that this is going to be a miracle that's going to happen later on. Watch at the end of this episode series as we get into it. Let me check the time. We're good. Yeah, we're good. It was going to be a long study, so thank you. We'll break this up into some pieces. So now let's move forward. we need to establish a point regarding Eliyahu and also John the Baptist. So we need to establish a point regarding these two. So, some people will say that John the Baptist was Eliyahu, was Elijah. And I'll say yes and no. But let's look at what the scriptures say. So let's get into it. Let's get into Matthew. I didn't have that up on main screen when I was showing you all the scriptures that was there, so you just kind of heard me talking about it. But go ahead and look on that on your own. I did reference all the scripture locations directly. I don't have time to be doing editing right now, so it's all one continual take. But let's go forward in Matthew chapter 11, 13. And we have here, for all the prophets and the Torah prophesied until Yahuchanan, until John. That's John the Baptist. And if you wish to accept it, he is Elijah, he is Eliyahu, who was about to come. He who has ears, let him hear. Okay, well, he who has ears, let him hear. But he is Eliyahu who was about to come. Well, close the book. John the Baptist is Elijah. Case closed. We already know. So, there's more to it, right? So why does it say ears to hear? He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Why does it say that? Because there's a secret message that is there. And what does it mean? Does it say that I guess you could answer, what was he Eliyahu? So what does it mean he is Eliyahu who was about to come? What does it mean was about to come? What does that mean that he was about to come? Is there more than one Eliyahu? Is there why did Elisha tear it into the garment into two pieces? So let's look here later on Matthew chapter 17, and let's look in verse 10. And his Talmudim, his disciples, his taught ones, said to him, saying, why then do the scribes say that Eliyahu has to come first? And Yahusha, Jesus, answering, said to them, Eliyahu, Elijah, is indeed coming first and shall restore all. But I say to you that Eliyahu has already come. And they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wished. In this way, the Son of Adam is also about to suffer by them. Then the taught ones understood that he had spoken to them about Yahuchanan the Immerser. But did the disciples understand everything at every single point in time through his ministry? Well, there's plenty of evidence that they were learning as they were going, but it says here that the taught ones understood that he has spoken to them about Yahuchanan the Immerser, and that is correct. He did talk to them about John the Baptist regarding verse 12. I say to you that Eliyahu has already come. So yes, Eliyahu had already come. He's talking about John the Baptist, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit, but they did not recognize him and did to him whatever they wished. However, what people don't look at is verse 11. I want you to see a secret, brothers and sisters. He who has ears to hear, let him hear, right? And Yahusha answering, and Jesus answering, said to them, Eliyahu is indeed coming first and shall restore all. Coming is future tense. Shall restore all is future tense. But the next verse says Eliyahu has already come, past tense, and they did not recognize him, past tense, and did to him whatever they wished, past tense. So we have future tense, Matthew chapter 17:11, past tense, Matthew 17:12. So we have future tense and past tense in the same thing. To Eliyahu. The garment was ripped into two pieces. Elisha tore it into two pieces because there is a dual-fold fulfillment of Eliyahu, and John the Baptist fulfilled the shadow type and picture of a greater Eliyahu that is yet to come. And we'll get into that. Man, brothers and sisters, stay with me. I hope you're hungry. You hungry? I hope this is good, nourishing information. So let's get into Luke chapter 1, verses 15. Luke 1:15 says, "For he shall be great before Yahweh, and shall drink no wine and strong. He is who? This is John the Baptist. Okay, and you shall call his name Yahuchanan or John. Okay, Verse 15, he shall be great before Yahweh and shall drink no wine and strong drink at all. They believe this to be a Nazirite vow. I do too. And he shall be filled with the Ruach Kodesh. I think that's number 6 Nazirite vow. Anyways, he shall be filled with the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb. And he shall turn away many of the he shall turn, not away, pardon me, and he shall turn many of the children of Yasharal, many of the children of Israel, to Yahuwah their Elohim. And he shall go before him in the Ruach and power. So the spirit and power of Eliyahu, of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the disobedient to the insight of the righteous. Daniel chapter 12, verse 3 and 4 stuff. And, other places too. I think 10 talks about this too. Daniel 12:10. Look that up on your own time. We got a lot of information, little time. So he says here, to the insight of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for Yahuwah. So we have here that he comes in the what? He says that he comes in the spirit and power of Eliyahu. So the spirit, he comes in that spirit of Eliyahu, of Elijah. But was he Elijah? Well, if he comes in the spirit and power, was he Elijah? Splitting words here. So splitting hairs that is here. Was he Elijah? So was he the Eliyahu, the man that went up into the flying chariot about 3,000 years ago from this point now? It would have been about 1,000 years ago from about when this time that this book was written. But about 3,000 years ago now, was he that same Elijah? Well, don't take my word for it. Let's take his word for it. John chapter 1, verses 20 and 21. And he confessed. Who's he? The witness of Yahuchanan. This is John the Baptist. They say, who are you? And he confessed and did not deny, but confessed, I am not the Messiah. And then what did he say in verse 21? And they asked him, what then? Are you Eliyahu? Well, why are they asking if he's Eliyahu? Well, we'll get into why, because Eliyahu went up into that chariot. And where did Eliyahu go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go, guys? Where did he go? Where does the scripture say he went? All of a sudden he went up in this chariot 3,000 years ago from now, about 3,000 years ago from now. Where's Eliyahu? Where's he at? Well, it's prophesied he's going to return. So they're waiting for this prophecy to be fulfilled. So they're asking if he's Elijah. And he says, what does he say? I am not. Okay, so when Messiah says, when he says in let me find where that's at. When he says in Matthew 11:14, and if you wish to accept it, he is Eliyahu who is about to come. He is correct. He comes in the power in the spirit and power of Eliyahu. But is he Eliyahu? Well, he says here, I am not. Are you the prophet? Well, this prophet is Messiah. We covered that in Deception of the Sos episode. This is Deuteronomy 18, I think 15 through 18, connected with Acts chapter 3. I think it's 3:22 or 20 through 22, somewhere in that location there in Acts chapter 3, that this prophet is Messiah that's prophesied. And he said, no. Therefore they said to him, who are you? So he says that he is not. When they ask him if he's Elijah, he says, I am not. So we gotta, John the Baptist, he said he's not Elijah. So again, how many Eliyahu? Well, we saw in Matthew chapter 17, 11, it says, and Eliyahu, Elijah is indeed coming first and shall restore all, but, meaning that there's a connection. But, however, what I just said, there's something in a pivot point in opposition, but I say to you that Eliyahu has already come. So he's talking about two Elijahs. So indeed, Eliyahu is indeed coming first and shall restore all, but Eliyahu already come. There's that to Elijah. So now let's look here in John, later on in John 1:25, he says, and they asked him saying, why then do you baptize if you are not the Messiah, nor Eliyahu, nor the prophet? And then he goes on from there. So confirming, he would have had another point to say, no, I am Eliyahu. I'm sorry, I misspoke. No, he said that he's not Elijah. And now they say this, and then he doesn't, correct them a second time. He came in the power and spirit But there is those two Elijah. There's only one Elijah from the Old Testament. And John the Baptist in Luke 1:17 was in the spirit and power, and he said that he wasn't Elijah. So who is the one who is indeed coming first, spoken of in Matthew 17:11? Who would that be? Well, let's look at a prophecy. This is the prophecy that the Pharisees were looking at in this time, because they knew that this is a prophecy. Now that we have that point that there are two Elijahs, the one that has already come, John the Baptist, and then there is a greater Elijah or a greater fulfillment, the fullness of Eliyahu yet to come here in the end days. Man, such a beautiful understanding when you understand this. We have Malachi chapter 4 through 6. So let me go to Malachi 4. Remember the Torah of Moshe, the law of Moses, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb for all Yasharal, laws and right ruling. See, I am sending you Elijah, the prophet before. Highlight that. Mark it down. Write it down. Remember that. Before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. So it comes before that great day. He shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with utter destruction. So I want you to remember these points here. There's the Torah, that the Torah of Moses still applies in the end days prophecy. In fact, this Elijah is to bring the hearts of the children to their fathers and the fathers to the children. And that also that Moses is referenced and connected with Elijah. We're going to see Moses and Elijah continuously being referenced together. And that is there. Now, I want briefly, we'll touch on this point later. This word right here, send, I want you to remember that this word send, shalach, which can mean, as you can see here, to send. Let me go into full screen here. You see here, to send away, let go, stretch out, to let loose, to send off or forth. Okay. So I wanted you to understand that point with shalach, and we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back to shalach at a later point in time. So now let's remember that this event. I want to highlight it again. That this event is before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. And so we see this terminology elsewhere. So let's look at where else we see this terminology. We see this terminology in Acts chapter 2, verse 20. Now, when was Acts chapter 2? Well, it's during Chag Shavuot, the festival of Pentecost, found in Leviticus 23 and in other points. And this is when what? This is when the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit, this is when the Spirit was given. After the death, burial, and resurrection of Messiah, this is when the Spirit is given. The Holy Spirit is given. That promise that is spoken of in John chapter 14, through 17. We see the book of John, the Gospel of 14 through 17. That chapter there. This helper, this Spirit that is being given. So this happens on Pentecost. Now, we see that Peter stands up. Kepha stands up. That's the Peter. Kepha is his Hebrew name here. And then he sits here and he quotes. He quotes that the Spirit is being poured out. This is the latter rain event. This what happened here in Acts chapter 2 is the former rain event. This is 144,000 study. I don't know if I'll be able to get into this or Babylon the Great in its fullness, but this teaching here, the two witnesses has to get out now. I don't have time. So it says here that he shows wonders, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. And then here it is, that the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before. Once you remember that day, I believe that this is marker points of prophetic marker. If you remember the Abomination of Desolation video series, especially part 1, we connected how prophecy that is written the same way can chronologically be linked, can be sequentially linked through a timestamp. Well, I believe that this is the timestamp as it's written in the same way before the coming of the great and splendid or awesome, as we read in Malachi 4:5, day of Yahweh. And so I believe that since this here in Acts chapter 2 happened on Shavuot, that I believe that this event with 2 witnesses will happen on Shavuot, but correct me if I'm wrong. And this will be that everyone who calls upon the name, the character, the authority of Yahuwah shall be saved, because there's some crazy stuff that's going to be going on during this period in time. Okay, so now where else do we see that in the Old Testament? We need to go to Joel chapter 2. And Joel chapter 2, we see that same terminology that is there in Joel chapter 2:31. He says, the sun turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. And maybe I'll give you a precursor here. If you go just a few verses up here, in verse 23, it talks about the teacher of righteousness, which is the Ruach Kodesh, as we get from, John chapter 14 talks about this. And he says, I'll cause the rain to come down for you. Now, ISR translation is great. Other translations, I believe, have some issues, but you take your pick on what you want. He has here the former rain, so he has the former rain and the latter rain as before. So we have a former rain and a latter rain event that is happening during this period in time, which is connected to this event that happens before the great and awesome day of Yahuwah, or that great and awesome day that is there. So this event again in Acts chapter 2 on Pentecost or Shavuot. This is why I believe that the event of the 2 witnesses happens on a Shavuot. What else happened? This is when the Ruach Kodesh in Acts 2 was established. And then this is also when the law, the Torah at Mount Sinai happened on a Shavuot, was given. That is there. So on Shavuot, you have the law given, the truth. And then in Acts 2, you have the Spirit given, the Ruach that is there. So Ruach Ua Ameth, the Spirit and truth. John chapter 4, verses 20 through 24, talk about we need to worship in spirit and truth. Shavuot is a shadow type, is a shadow type and picture of spirit and truth. I have a study that I'm not going to be able to get into in this season, but it is a study about the birthday of Messiah. Those that had done any level of education know it was not December 25th. Some houses, 2 major camps it happened in the fall feast days. Some will say the Day of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. Some will say it happened on Sukkoth when he dwelt among us in tents. And then others will say it happened in the spring. I think that Messiah's birthday was on Shavuot. When does the life of a man begin? At conception. So he dwelt among us. It was conceived during Chag Sukkoth, but he wasn't brought into birth until Shavuot. That 40 weeks later, 9 so months later that was there. But that's a different study to get into. But we have spirit and truth given on Shavuot. I believe it to be Messiah's birthday, Shavuot. But I want to do a deeper research on that before I do a study. So I might retract this point there. However, unretractable, Shavuot was established. Pentecost, whatever you want to call it, was there on Acts chapter 2 and also Mount Sinai when the law was given. So you have the spirit and truth given on Shavuot, and I believe that he who walked in spirit and truth is given on Shavuot in his birthday, and then also I believe that the 2 witnesses which represent spirit and truth, and I'm going to share with you why it represents spirit and truth among a lot of other things, I believe is also on Shavuot, but more on that later on. Now. With that all being said, let me see where I'm at. Now we can get into the message, the mission, and the witness of the 2 witnesses. So, you know what? I am going to go ahead and end it here. Maybe this will only be a 2-part series. I don't quite know how much I have left, but I'm going to go ahead and end this information here. And so check out, part 2 of the series. We're going to get into CERN. We're going to get into, I believe, factoring out, not to factor out Messiah, but, he's one of a kind. He's only begotten. He's in a category of his own. Okay. But, aside from the only begotten Son, the greatest miracle, the greatest 2 miracles I believe ever to be recorded are about to happen, and they happen when the 2 witnesses arrive on scene. The greatest miracle is Messiah. He's our greatest gift, our greatest miracle. He is the cornerstone, the chief cornerstone for us. But again, but he is in a class of his own. But aside from him and everything related with that, the greatest, well, and these miracles are done through him, so it's through him anyways. But the greatest 2 miracles I believe ever in recorded history, up until that point in time, are going to happen through the 2 witnesses. These 2 superheroes of faith. Hero might not be the best word to use. So these 2 super gibor, these 2 super giborim of amunah, of faith, when they arrive on scene, amazing. When we get into what that is. So with that, I want to go ahead and we'll close off, and we'll get into our don't cast pearls before swine. Now, get into our jar of pearls that we have here. Brothers and sisters, you are not swine. So, so I can go ahead and cast this pearl before you. But let's go into. We'll connect it here where we have. Let me move this out here. There. We have here Revelation chapter. Well, I didn't know quite what I was gonna. Here, we'll connect this with this. When the Babylon the Great study, talking about the 2 witnesses, and their dead body lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom, which would be what after idolatry and adultery, right? Perversion, Mitzrayim, Egypt, after slavery, where also our master was impaled. So where was our master impaled? Well, we know that he was impaled outside of, on the outskirts of the city, Jerusalem. And so that great city where they die, is spiritually called Sodom and Mitzrayim. So where our master was impaled was where? Jerusalem. So that great city, it says here, which is spiritually called Sodom, which would be what? Idolatry, adultery, spiritual adultery. And then we would have Egypt, which would be slavery. So we have adultery, idolatry, and slavery in the spiritual sense, and is connected where Jerusalem, where our master was impaled, which would be Jerusalem. So, more on that, if I can ever get to it, to the Babylon the Great study, look in, and if you have trouble swallowing that understanding, read Galatians chapter 4. I believe it starts in. I don't want to get into it because we have a lot to go into. Let me look. I think it's 425. 420. Start in 423. 422, 421, right? Okay. And 421, and then read about the 2 Jerusalems that are there. And if you have a problem swallowing that pearl that is given to you. So remember to guard your heart, guard your soul, guard the Ra, or pay the toll.